there, guys, and welcome to TalkBox with Oktavists. I'm your host, Xander Mang, and today we have the one and only Alex Lukianov. Please introduce yourself, sir.
Hey, Alex Lukianov. I'm out here in Florida, and I'm more than happy to chat with you. I guess I should start off by telling you that people are probably going to be a little disappointed because I'm not a professional singer. I have the good fortune of singing with professional singers and have been doing that for the last few years. But I'm actually a professional CEO, and I've started quite a few companies. And in fact, I just found out that you're in San Diego. So there's a very large company. I don't know if you heard of it. It's called Nuvasive, but I'm the founder of Nuvasive. It's in San Diego, and it's a spine implant company. So, but that's really what I've been doing for the last mostly 35 years, starting different companies and growing them. And I've retired as a full-time CEO, but I am still involved as an investor and a part-time CEO in a number of different medical technologies. So right now we're bringing a robot to the marketplace.
Wow.
We are doing ultrasound technology to change the way minimally invasive spine surgery is being done. We've developed some new devices for repair of the spine. So I work in a lot of different areas like that. I also am involved with PaTRAM, which I started some 5-6 years ago now. And I think a lot of folks are familiar with PaTRAM and what we do there, and I'd be happy to chat about that. But that's my background. And like I said, I'm really fortunate because I get to sing with these fantastic guys. And I love it. I really do like to sing. But I mostly spend my time in the lower register doing that kind of stuff. But it's a blast. And I largely sing Orthodox music more so than anything else, Russian Orthodox especially.
Yeah. So Mr. Lukianov is a man renowned for his being able to sing low, even by Oktavists standards. I've seen footage of him singing all the way down to the Contra D. But what's just as impressive is his starting of the PaTRAM Institute. He co-founded it. Can you tell us more about the PaTRAM Institute, Mr. Lukianov?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So PaTRAM is something we put together just over 5 years ago. And as I mentioned, I was actually in Russia. I was in Moscow on a business trip. I was doing some business development work for my company, looking to open potentially spine clinics and do some things over there. My wife is a conductor and a singer, and she urged me to meet with this maestro in Moscow by the name of Vladimir Gorbik. I said, look, honey, I love you, but I don't have time for this. I got a lot of stuff to do. I've got a very busy schedule. I don't really have time to meet with Gorbik. It's like, you got to meet with Gorbik. So what am I going to talk to this guy about? What am I going to talk to a maestro about? This is 6 years ago. And I really have nothing to say to the guy. I'm a businessman. So make a long story short, she arranged the meeting. She said, no, I want you to meet this guy. She had met him in the U.S. at a master class. And so it was the beginning of Great Lent. And the first service of Great Lent is called the Canon of St. Andrew of Crete. It's a very beautiful service. And so I went to the church, the Patvoria, it's called, the Moscow Representation Church, where he's got his choir, and he's put out, I don't know, a dozen discs through them. And so I went to hear Gorbik, and I went to attend the service. I went to church, and I was so moved. I was like, I have never heard a choir sing like this. Now, obviously, not necessarily from a technical standpoint, but from the perspective of being so prayerful. I mean, the music was lovely, but I looked around, and these people, and this is a service of repentance, the beginning of Lent, and people are crying. And I thought, wow, I mean, people are moved to tears. And I'm not an emotional guy, but God, I'm starting to feel like I'm starting to get some tears going here. And so I met Gorbik afterwards, and we chatted. And I said, that's incredible. I said, but you have the luxury of having a fully professional choir. So we don't have that a lot in the U.S., especially in Orthodox churches. We're lucky if we have a semi-professional choir, let alone it's all amateurs for the most part.
Yeah.
He said 70% of my singers were amateurs that I trained myself. I said, what are you talking about? He said, "Oh yeah, these guys I've just been training them for years, and I turned them into professionals." I said, "What do you mean? You did that without going through the whole, academic process?" And so he said, "Yeah, I mean, obviously there's things that I teach them, but effectively what I do is I teach them just the practical things that they need to do to sing without making mistakes." I thought, this is fascinating. I wonder if there's a way to apply this to Russian Orthodox churches in America. And so we started talking about it, and he started telling me more about how he could do this, and I started thinking about it from a business standpoint. And I thought, you know what? Why don't we put together an institute? My wife and I would be very excited as a way to give back to our church. So we did. So we founded the Institute. My wife and I self-funded it, put the whole thing together, got it started. And so here we are, some 5-6 years later, had the good fortune of some Grammy nominations with some of the discs we put out, and we've had male choir and mixed choir, and so it all started off with a way to train people to sing, and we still do a fair amount of that for the Orthodox faith. And then we've been moving more and more into the professional side as far as recordings and performances, and I've really enjoyed producing the music, which I do together with others folks. And so I kind of applied my business skills to that, and that's how we basically put PaTRAM together. And PaTRAM is really intended to spread, I think, the beauty of Russian Orthodox music in particular. And I think what we try to do when we record and when we perform, we try to make it as absolutely precise as the way it was done. And so, for example, one of the things that's really important to me, and this is really hard, especially for Americans who love that music, but we sing it without an accent. We insist that it's sung without accents, and that's really hard to do. But I want to be able to pass the Russian test. So when we do a performance, I want Russians to say, "Those are Americans?" I mean, and half of our choir is typically American or North American or outside of Russians, And we've had very, very good success with that, and trying to truly replicate, because I think, you could, obviously Rachmaninoff has been recorded by a lot of different choirs, and wonderful recordings, beautiful, and each one is unique in its own way. We're actually going to be doing a recording, God willing, in October of Rachmaninoff's All-Night Vigil with a male choir in Moscow. We'll see if that happens. But I think what we're trying to do is to do it in such a way that it really doesn't get done by university choirs. They sound a little bit different, choirs, even very professional, you can hear the accents, and so we try to eliminate that. It's just like if you go to an opera and you're listening to Italian, but you hear a horrible Italian accent, you're like, gosh, the music's great, but this is driving me nuts, And so I think that's one of the things that we strive to do, at least from our vantage point with PaTRAM. Sorry, long answer, but I wanted to cover a little bit of ground on that.
No, that's great. That's great. I love the in-depth analysis that you gave. Now, your father was a pastor in the Russian Orthodox Church. Did his faith and beliefs help influence your decision to found this organization?
Yeah, I think so. So I sang a little bit in church early on. Mostly I was an altar server when I grew up, so I'm a priest kid. So I grew up that way and was exposed to the church. But I didn't really sing that much. I didn't sing in choirs and in high school or in college or anything of that sort. And really got started to. My wife was the one that started pulling me more into it. When we got married, we've been married now for over 25 years, and so she started pulling me into it. So I started singing a little bit more often at church services. Now I do routinely. The last decade or so, I've been singing more routinely that way. But there's no question, it had a very big influence on me, because I grew up with the faith. I grew up with a love and appreciation for Russian Orthodox music. And of course, an understanding of the words, so it's prayer. For us, it's also prayer. It's not just lovely music. It's when I listen to Rachmaninoff, maybe you're really moved by Rachmaninoff, and I can be too, right? But the words get me. They're so beautiful, these petitions are so lovely. So yes, there's no question that has a very big impact.
Thanks. So everyone knows that you're one of the best octavists in the world. Um, so I don't know if you can help us out. But I've been asked a lot of questions by a lot of young basses. So can you give us young basses some help? How do you sing some low notes without it wobbling or breaking or anything like that?
You know, that's a tough one. I would say the most important thing is to relax. You know, we have a tendency to get all sort of I guess our throat gets closed, and the heart. Like I can tell you that from I'm not really a good teacher when it comes to this. I can simply tell you my own experiences, right? And that's probably the better way to put it.
Yeah.
So I know when I'm around other octavists, I know that what starts to happen is that it builds my confidence because I hear them, I'm hearing what they're doing. I start to sing with these guys, and we're moving along. Let's say we're working on a recording or whatever we're doing. After a day or so, I find it so much easier to hit the notes, and I think it's just because I realize that I can hit them relatively easily, but I think there's something about the relaxation process and that sort of support you get with other octavists. I think what's really hard is to be the solo octavist. I mean, I think that's kind of hard in a choir. You can do it, and I've done it a fair amount, and that's fine. And it's you have a certain role that you can play, but boy, there's nothing like having two or three. It's just a whole different process, and so I think for me, at least. Those notes start to come as the more that I'm singing the low notes. They just start to naturally appear more effortlessly as the day goes on. And frankly, sometimes they even surprise you. You're like, geez, we're really getting down there, And but it's a lot of fun. I really enjoy it.
Yeah. So recently, there's a new album coming out called More Honourable Than the Cherubim, in which the
Yes.
PaTRAM Institute was able to hire 10 octavists. How are you
Yes.
able to pull off such a feat?
Well, that was one of the things that I asked Maestro Gorbik to do, and you know what? It wasn't easy. It's pretty hard to find 10 octavists.
Yeah.
And so I would say probably, I would say that out of that group of 10, I would say really low octavists in that group, there were 3. There were an additional probably 4 that were good octavists, and then the other 3, they kind of had volume problems as we were starting to get lower, but they could hit the notes for the most part. I think they couldn't get below G. A lot of those guys couldn't get much below G. The few of them, So I think it was an interesting mix, and it's kind of how it's interesting, how I ended up singing with Gorbik some 5-6 years ago. So we started PaTRAM, and I wasn't a singer with him. It's because these guys are professionals. They sing very high level stuff. And I think it was about 6-7 months later, and we're on a call like this, and Gorbik says to me, "By the way, you said you sang." I said I sang, but I don't sing that well. He said, "Well, let's do the scale." So we start doing the scale. So we're going down the scale, and all of a sudden his eyes like open up like this, and he says to me in Russian, he says, "Dude, there's like one guy in Moscow that can hit this note. You're hitting this note. There's one guy, I'm telling you, one guy in Moscow. He's like, you're hitting an E." I was like, "Is that good?" He's like, "Oh yeah, that's pretty good." He's like, "You're going to sing in my choir." And I was a sitting CEO at the time. I was like, "Are you crazy?" I mean, I was traveling all over the world. I was running a public company. I'm like, this is impossible. And then I got this repertoire from him. And we had a house in Hawaii back then. And so we were on vacation. I spent an entire week walking around the beach of Hawaii, memorizing this repertoire. Because I really couldn't read the music.
Yeah.
So I was memorizing this, and I was like, oh my gosh, I told my wife, this is the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. I can get in front of 20,000 people and give a speech, and an arousing speech, and I've done a lot of that kind of stuff in public speaking and motivational speech. But I said, this just spooks me to no end because I'm outside of my comfort zone. anyway, so that's when I found out actually from Gorbik that I do have a low voice. And he really did a lot to encourage me, and I made it into his choir. I've sung with him a lot over the last several years, and wonderful opportunities. We've sung for U.S. ambassadors in Moscow, and we've done tours, and we're planning to do a large tour. God willing, with this COVID stuff, who knows? But if everything goes well, we're planning to do a concert next year in Moscow with the very famous actor, and then a worldwide tour potentially even next year. So a lot of really cool, interesting things that PaTRAM is doing that I really enjoy and that we drive, and my wife and I participate in. So that's kind of, like going back to your question about technique and all that, I don't really, it's just really listening to people around me and being, I think, sort of carried by them, and then relaxing, just, learning to relax and be comfortable.
One of the most famous videos of octavism right now is of the 10 octavists, yourself included, descending to a D1. And how are you guys able to pull off such a feat? And now that we know, which one of you guys was able to do that?
Well, that was mostly me, and one of the other octavists. There's two of us in particular that are able to pull that.
Thanks.
But but what happens is I think a lot of the other guys are they're adding a little bit of color because they may not have the volume, but they're helping at that point.
Yeah.
But there's really two of us that were able to do that.
Awesome, thanks. Now, of course, the question that came up was, did someone train you to sing bass, or are you self-taught?
I'm self-taught, but I'm self-taught. The short answer is I'm self-taught. But it's also an unfair question because it's kind of like saying, okay, how did you learn how to act? You're an actor. You didn't go to acting school. No, I didn't go to acting school. But I act with some of the best people in the profession. Well, when you act with some of the best people in the profession, it's going to rub off if you're paying attention. And I think the same thing. I had that good fortune. I mean, I've sung with Glenn Miller several times. He's fantastic. I think he's in my mind, he's the best octavist there is. And I don't want to take away from anybody else, but I think Glenn's just incredible. His control, his ability, I think, and plus he's a wonderful human being. He's just a great guy. And there's lots of good octavists. He's not the only one, but I've had the opportunity to sing with him. I've had the opportunity to sing with some Russian guys that are excellent. A good friend of mine is from Canada. Elias Dubelstein is an octavist, and I learned a lot from singing alongside of him. And he hears everything, and I think that's the part that is hard for me. Is I don't hear everything, and he's like, if it's off by 10 cents, he's like giving you the dirty look. I'm like, whoa, 10 cents. He's like, oh yeah, you're off by a hair or whatever it is. You better pull that up. And I open my mouth. It's like, you're going to be off a little bit, and I'm like, so immediately you tune into that, and during rehearsing. And so I think it's helped me immensely, but a lot of that is just the people. I've been surrounded by the very, very best singers, and so I'm just emulating what they're doing.
Awesome, thanks. Now, Mr. Lukianov, we know that you're a busy man, but what do you do on your free time?
Well, I race Ferraris.
Wow.
so that's fun. I completed my license training last year, so that's something I really enjoy is racing. So I do that. I like to car collect. I travel quite a bit. So my wife and I travel a lot. I've been very fortunate in my life relative to financial opportunities and things of that sort. So we spent a lot of time. This is all sort of now things. The world has changed as a result of COVID, right? But we have a place in Manhattan, so we often go to Manhattan, and we spend a lot of time there. We have a lot of friends. I'm from New York originally. I'm a New Yorker, and my family is mostly in New Jersey now. So, but I also enjoy doing the things like investing in companies and starting companies and prom takes up a fair amount of time. So there's a lot of different things that I work on. I'm not a guy that is easily bored, so I'm always doing something.
Awesome, thanks. All right, so here at TalkBox with Oktavists, we have a tradition to ask the Oktavists, what's your lowest note? So, Mr. Lukianov, can you give us your lowest note?
Well, I could try. It's a little bit hard because I got allergies right now, but I think I've been very hard hit for some reason. So, but I could tell you this one thing that we started doing. My friend I mentioned in the interview, Elias from Canada, that we sing with a lot. And when we first met Glenn Miller, first I think Elias already knew him, but the first time I met Glenn comes in the room, and I have a pretty normal speaking voice, I guess. I don't speak in octaves. Glenn walks in, right? So we're all sitting there talking, and Glenn arrived late. He walks in, he's like, hi, I'm Glenn, hi, I'm Glenn. I'm like, who the hell talks like that? I was like, nobody talks like that. So I was like, that guy reminds me of the commercial, Dodge, Ram tough. And so ever since then, every time we see each other, we're like, Dodge, Ram tough. And then we ended up singing Glenn Miller. I don't know whatever happened to this recording. Glenn Miller, Elias, and I sang the Itsy Bitsy Spider as a way to terrify children if they wouldn't go to bed. So we're like, the Itsy Bitsy Spider. Anyway, so I don't know what my lowest note is right now, but I can try to get down pretty low. But, sorry, I've got allergies. Anyway,
wow.
That's probably the best I could do at the moment.
Wow, that's crazy. All right, so thanks so much, Mr. Lukianov. And hey, guys, hope you enjoyed this interview. Peace out,
Yeah,
and
my pleasure.
God bless.